The first thing there is to know about seeding in the greenhouse is where the greenhouse is at. And that's not the greenhouse, that's a barn. This is the greenhouse. It's where we keep the seed trays so the plants can grow before they're put into the garden. You might be thinking, why would you grow plants indoors and then move them outdoors, dummy? Well, thank you for asking, and how dare you. There are plenty of reasons to start seeds and transplant crops later. It can give you a head start on the growing season and help get your plants growing even while the weather is still unfavorable to their growth. It can protect them from other external harm like pests and disease until they're more mature. It can ensure that your plants get the right amount of water and nutrients they need when they're just seedlings. It can also be more economically and environmentally efficient in the long run.
Before we can start seeding, we need a tray. These trays are also known as flats, but there are types of trays that we're using. Some ones like this one here has no cells and is used for things like microgreens. But what we're using is the 128 trays. These are used for tomatoes, broccoli, and other large-scale crops. They're called 128s because they have 128 cells.
The recipe that we used for our seeding examples in this video is about 10 yogurt cups of compost. They use the yogurt cups on the farm because they've already measured out a certain amount of what they needed, and then it's just easier to do it that way. Depending on what you're doing, you can add feather meal to it. We used 1/8 of a cup for starting our 128s, but you could use 1/4 a cup if you were potting up. The line in this bin is very helpful. It was scraped here by someone else on the farm to help speed up the process of doing this. It shows that they've already done the calculations of like where things usually are. Once you've added 10 cups of compost and your feather meal or another fertilizer, you dump a load of soil mix, like this bag of peat moss and perlite mixture, into the bin, and you fill it all the way up to that handy little indication line. After all the ingredients are in, mix them together by hand, just like you would a cake. But don't lick your hands afterwards.
The amount you want to water the soil is enough so that when you mold it with your hands, it sticks together, and just the right amount so that it can easily crumble. The reason you want it that amount of moisture is because the seeds can get an immediate gratification with water. After the mix is all moist, just drop the seed tray in the bin and then smother it in the soil to get as much into it as possible. Then, once we've done that, just bring the tray full of soil over to a table, just drop it down. Maybe again, just to pack the soil into each of the cells, and then move some soil around to make sure that soil from the middle gets into the corners, to be sure that all the cells are evenly filled.
Now you gotta make the holes where the seeds can sleep. This cool tool is called a dibble bar. It was made for the sole purpose of quickly punching little holes into 128 so starting seeds would be more efficient. Can you tell it's homemade? Here is a bag of beet seeds. The depth of the hole always depends on the size of the seed, but generally speaking, if you're using a 128, the depth that the dibble bar makes is perfect. After the holes are made, you can lay a little seed into each hole, but again, not too deep. Just lay it in the hole and cover it up with some soil, and it should be good to go. Do this for every cell until you fill the tray, but you don't have to be delicate about it. Just plop the seed down, cover it up, and move on. After you've covered each seed, lay the tray on the ground and give it a good hose down. They have a better water hose head on the farm than the one we used here that has a more gentle stream. The thing to keep in mind, though, is not to point the hose directly on the tray, but to sweep across it a couple times.
And then you are done. Once it's watered, you can just sit your tray in the greenhouse next to the other ones, and in just a few weeks, your tray will look like this. And they will be ready for transplant by then.